For the first time in American history, the ability to buy basic food has become a luxury that millions cannot afford. Let me say that again. Right now, in 2025, in the wealthiest nation on earth, families are choosing between paying for groceries or paying rent. They are skipping meals. They are going hungry. And this crisis is only accelerating. Over 47 million Americans are living in food-insecure households. That is 1 in 7 people. 1 in 7. To put that in perspective, that is more people than live in the entire state of California. And that number is climbing by millions every single year. We are watching the slow collapse of food affordability in real time, and almost nobody is talking about it. Food prices have skyrocketed nearly 30% since 2019. Let that sink in. In just 6 years, the cost of putting basic food on your table has exploded by almost a third. But here is the devastating part. During that same 6-year period, median wages have barely budged. Americans are getting paid essentially the same money while their grocery bills have tripled in some categories. Eggs used to be a cheap protein source for struggling families. No longer. Egg prices have surged 10.9% just in the past year alone, driven by an avian flu outbreak that devastated the poultry industry. Beef prices are up 13.9% year over year, and they keep climbing month after month. Chicken, pork, vegetables, dairy, every single basic staple is getting more expensive, and there is no relief in sight. According to the latest data, 70% of American consumers are actively struggling with grocery affordability. 7 out of 10. Think about that. When you walk into a grocery store, the person in front of you, behind you, next to you, most of them are silently panicking about how they will pay for what is in their cart. In New York City alone, 40% of local families cannot afford their weekly food costs. 40%. That is not a struggling neighborhood or a poor community. That is the entire city. Teachers, nurses, police officers, engineers, lawyers, they're all taking home groceries and wondering if they made the right choice. The statistics are even more brutal when you look at what is happening to the most vulnerable. In households experiencing what experts call very low food security, 97% of people reported not having money to buy food after their groceries ran out. Nearly 70% reported being hungry but not eating because they could not afford it. And 30% of adults reported skipping entire days of eating to stretch their food budget for their children. This is not some economic theory. This is real families in real America making impossible decisions. A web developer in Lawrence, Kansas, named Jeremy Tolbert, told reporters his family healthcare premiums are rising 18% to $2,600 per month. So his family has decided they are cutting back on food. He said, and I quote, "We are going from a comfortable middle-class lifestyle to eating how we did when we first got out of college. A middle-class family in America is now eating like broke college kids just to afford healthcare and keep a roof over their heads. Where did this come from? How did we get here?" To understand the grocery store recession, we have to go back and look at what happened to the American food system over the past decade. The story starts in 2019, before the pandemic, before the supply chain crisis, before all the chaos. Food prices were stable. Grocery stores were predictable. Families could budget for meals. Then COVID hit in 2020 and everything changed overnight. The pandemic disrupted supply chains across the globe. Shipping costs exploded. Labor shortages in meat packing plants and farms created bottlenecks. Suddenly, the cost of getting food from farm to table went through the roof. Inflation hit the economy hard from 2021 through 2023. The Federal Reserve raised interest rates to historic levels, trying to cool down runaway prices. For a while, it seemed like it was working. Inflation started cooling in late 2023 and into 2024. But here is the catch. The prices never came back down. Once food companies realized they could charge more, they kept charging more. They raised prices and they kept them raised. Profits soared while consumers suffered. Food at home prices increased 1.8% in 2024, which sounds modest until you realize that food price increases have been relentless for 6 straight years. This is compounding damage. A 30% increase over 6 years is not the same as a 5% increase 1 year. It is exponential pain for families already living paycheck to paycheck. But here is where it really gets dark. The affordability crisis is not evenly distributed. It is hitting the poorest Americans the hardest, creating a devastating wealth divide. A middle-class family with a stable job and decent income can absorb grocery inflation. They might grumble, they might cut back on luxury items, but they will eat. Poor families do not have that luxury. They are making impossible choices between electricity and groceries, between medication and milk, between keeping a roof over their heads and feeding their kids. Unemployment is linked to a 30% greater likelihood of food insecurity. That means if you lose your job, you are not just losing income. You are at massive risk of actual hunger. Southern states have a particularly acute problem. They have massive numbers of what experts call food deserts. These are neighborhoods where it is nearly impossible to buy affordable, nutritious food. Southern states combined with weak safety nets leave residents especially vulnerable not just to food insecurity, but to very low food security, meaning they cannot afford to eat regularly. Geography matters too. Rural communities often have zero grocery stores within reasonable driving distance. They have to rely on convenience stores and dollar stores stocked with processed foods. Those neighborhoods are being hit harder than anywhere else by this crisis. The government's safety net is supposed to catch people when they fall. That safety net is called SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Millions of Americans depend on it. For decades, SNAP kept families afloat. But here's what happened. The expanded COVID benefits that kept millions of families from starving have been allowed to expire. School meal programs that fed kids for free have been cut. The child tax credit expansion is gone. In other words, the government is removing the safety net exactly when families need it the most. And they are doing it while food prices are at historic highs. The data shows that nearly 14% of all American households reported food insecurity between January and October of this year. That is up from 12.5% in 2024. And the trend is accelerating. Every month, more families are sliding into food insecurity. Every month, more people are making the choice to skip meals. Here's another shock that most people do not realize. Working people, employed people, people with jobs making up an increasingly large share of the food insecure population. This is not just unemployed people or people on welfare. This is nurses working double shifts and still not having enough money for groceries. Teachers buying supplies with their own money while unable to afford food. Warehouse workers, retail employees, service industry workers. They are all in the grocery store doing the math on their phone, trying to figure out what they can actually afford to take home. Food spending across America totaled over $1 trillion at home in 2024, but that money is not going as far as it used to. Americans are desperately using coupons and loyalty programs to stretch their budgets. 76% of shoppers now use digital coupons, up from lower levels just a few years ago. 64% are participating in loyalty programs. 38% are using retail apps trying to find deals. People are working harder than ever just to maintain the same lifestyle. They are spending more time hunting for discounts, clipping coupons, comparing prices, moving between different grocery stores just to save a few dollars. This is the hidden labor cost of the grocery recession. Families are spending hours every week just trying to afford to eat. So what happens next? Where is this heading? Food prices are predicted to rise 3.0% in 2025, faster than the 20-year historical average. Beef prices will keep climbing because of the U.S. cattle herd has been in decline since 2019. There are simply fewer cows being raised, which means less meat, which means higher prices. Eggs are still elevated due to the ongoing avian flu outbreak with no end in sight. Prices for sugar, sweets, and non-alcoholic beverages are all predicted to grow faster than their historical average. The trajectory is clear. Prices will continue rising. The squeeze on family budgets will continue tightening. More people will slide into food insecurity. More kids will go to bed hungry. More families will make choices between heat and food in the winter. This is not speculation. This is the baseline prediction from the Department of Agriculture. But here is what truly terrifies me about where this is heading. We have not even factored in a potential recession. If the economy enters a true downturn, if unemployment spikes, if wages start falling, the food insecurity numbers will skyrocket. We could be looking at 50 million, 60 million, 70 million Americans unable to afford adequate food. We could be looking at a humanitarian crisis unfolding right here at home. Think about what happened in 2008 when the economy collapsed. Food banks ran out of food. Charities could not keep up with demand. Soup lines returned. Now imagine that happening again, but with food prices 30% higher than they were then, and with a much larger portion of the population already on the edge of food insecurity. The comparison to past crises is instructive. During the Great Depression of the 1930s, food insecurity was universal and catastrophic. The Dust Bowl destroyed agricultural production, millions starved, bread lines stretched for blocks. We think we are past that now. We think a developed, wealthy nation could never allow that to happen again. But look at the numbers. Look at how many people are already hungry. Look at how quickly things can change. The 2008 financial crisis created massive food insecurity, but we are entering 2025 with a much larger foundation of existing food insecurity. We are not starting from a place of stability. We are starting from a place where 47 million people are already struggling to eat. What can happen from here? The situation can stabilize if food prices plateau and wages start catching up. That would require prices to hold steady for several years while income growth accelerates. The government would have to dramatically increase SNAP benefits to support struggling families. Supply chains would have to normalize. None of that seems likely given current trajectories. The more probable scenario is that food insecurity continues climbing. Prices continue rising, wages continue stagnating. More families are forced to make impossible choices. Children experience malnutrition, which damages their development. Adults experience stress and illness from food insecurity. Emergency rooms fill with people suffering from stress-related diseases. Food banks become overwhelmed. Charities cannot keep up. And then, if there is any kind of economic shock, any recession, any job losses, any sudden income reduction, the system breaks. The veneer of stability cracks. Suddenly, millions of middle-class Americans discover they are truly one crisis away from not being able to feed their families. This is not a prediction anymore. This is not a theoretical worst-case scenario. This is a warning based on real data about real people in real America right now. The grocery store recession is happening. The only question is whether we acknowledge it and address it, or whether we watch it accelerate into a humanitarian crisis. You are watching it happen in real time. The data is right there. The number of people experiencing food insecurity is climbing. The percentage of budgets going to food is rising. The number of people making impossible choices is growing. Millions of Americans are sliding into hunger while living in the richest country in human history. This is your reminder that crises do not announce themselves. They do not arrive with warning. They build quietly. They compound slowly. And by the time everyone agrees there is a crisis, it is often too late to prevent the worst outcomes. Pay attention to what is happening in grocery stores right now. Talk to people about it, share these numbers, make it real, make it visible, make it impossible to ignore, because right now, in November 2025, millions of Americans are going hungry. And if we do not change course, millions more will join them very soon.